Well, the one group that is still struggling for recognition of its vulnerability to HIV and AIDS infections is the group comprising sex workers. Now, to discuss this, I'm joined by Katlego Rasebitse, Advocacy Liaison for Sisonke Sex Workers Movement. Good evening and thank you for joining us.
Good evening too, and thank you for having me on your show.
Now, Deputy President David Mabuza, speaking at the commemoration of World AIDS Day today, said that the government is committed to fighting the scourge of HIV and AIDS. What is your impression of the government's programs thus far?
I would, to be honest, remember the 1990 that, the United Nations, targeted by 2030.
Yes.
As a country, we only reached the first 90.
Yes.
And when you look in countries like, your Namibia and Botswana, also, I just put the country, but they have already reached their 1990 as we speak.
Okay.
So South Africa, we're at a point whereby, like, once we reach the year 2030,
yes,
we would never reach the other two 90s. So okay, I'm speaking from that context.
Okay. So just before you go on, just what is this 1990? Just explain a little bit.
Okay. The first 90 people must be must know their status.
Yes.
And then the second 90 must be 90% of the people in the country.
Yes.
They must also be on ARVs.
Yes.
And then the other 90% of people must also be virally suppressed.
Okay.
So these are the three 90s that the whole world has put into.
Yes. So now in 2016, the then Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa launched the National Strategic Plan for HIV prevention and treatment, countrywide. Now, how effective has this plan been?
That plan, I remember, it was launched, on 2016.
Okay.
And immediately after the plan, sex workers themselves, it was for the first time that they were invited into the international, AIDS
yes,
conference spaces, where it has never happened before in the country.
Yes.
And it was a milestone.
Yes.
And I believe by then he was Ramaphosa was the co-chair of the chairperson of SANAC.
SANAC, yes.
And now he's president, and we kind of still holding him, to keep his promise, because of I remember there's the National Strategic Plan for STI and treatment for sex workers and TB,
yes,
and there's the national one whereby and the international NSP, decriminalization of sex work, yes, was one thing that was pulled out.
Okay.
And it was the whole sex workers community activists were shocked that how can, if we want to achieve this 1990, yes, and decriminalization of sex work is being pulled out. Up to today, yes, nobody wants to be held responsible. And looking at other programs that government does, nobody wants to speak about it. It's kind of it's still a bit of taboo in Parliament. You need to found this particular gatekeeper, mm-hmm, and then nobody wants to come clean about it. And I was actually looking forward to that in Orkney, mm-hmm, today, the NSP that was just recently been consulted, 2019-2022 for sex workers, mm-hmm, was going to be launched, but we don't know what the politics behind it. There's too much politics around it, because mm-hmm, we're still being seen as a country whereby people will roll the morality card, mm-hmm, that there's no proper consultation that is been done. But I believe that once sex work would be decriminalized, yes, that will be the only way by 2030, when, yes, we report back to the United Nations around yes, the universal health coverage, we'll be going to say, as a country, yes, we have achieved the target. I'll make one example. Yes. If mostly female that are arrested are, yes, black females. Yes. Which is the truth of it, and sometimes it's harsh. This is like the reality of the harshness of it. Yeah. You might never find your Indians, your white people being arrested. It's forever female that are arrested, and the police will tell you that no, we only pushing the arrest because of it's stats related, because of my boss said I must bring 50, and then I just took my van. Then the easy target, no violence involved. Soft they don't target, carry knives, soft target, so it's easy for me just to arrest any. So, but I'm quite excited that as a country. One of the government programs that we have done, we manage, to have a say within the police academy, whereby we sensitize them while they're still at the school in Pretoria, whereby we've got programs that we are running now, they're already being sensitized. When they start their work January next year, they already understand the full Sexual Offences Act, which is quite difficult, because some of them will say, all I know that if I see lots of makeup and then she stand in the street, then I will use bylaws. Yes. And shockingly, some of them, they even use bylaws that are ghost bylaws.
Really?
Yeah, they'll tell you that because the bylaws said you shouldn't, but when you look into the bylaws,
they don't exist.
They don't exist. Like,
just for example, wanted to make an arrest.
I just want to make an arrest. I'll make an example. In Mpumalanga, for saying, sure, you cannot buy alcohol on Sunday. Yes. In specific retailers, because those are the bylaws. So some police will use the bylaws for a specific city, not necessarily for that city.
Yes.
Because
specific municipality,
yes, because they're not applicable in that city.
Now, tell us about the programs. You just mentioned you're conducting programs at the police academy for new recruits.
Yes.
Tell us about what kind of programs are they, and what does it involve?
Basically, it's for us to sensitize them. Number one,
yes.
Remember, the law says you need to be caught in the act.
Yes.
There must be a witness. There must be a transaction, and there must be the law. There must be the buyer and the seller of sex to prove that indeed somebody was intending to break the law.
Yes.
So that we can have, the state can have a watertight case around this.
Okay.
So, but if the police just arresting
somebody who's a streetwalker,
and then they were like attempting prostitution, and then they don't even appear in court, and you find lots of sex workers. If statistics, now we're talking numbers. 57.7% of the country, the national level of sex workers are HIV positive.
Okay.
So for us to be saying we want to end AIDS and in 2030, and whereas we're using the laws that were formed in 1957 by the oppressor.
Yes.
When the oppressor came in the country, because those laws were built around like a woman wouldn't marry another woman, a white man cannot marry another,
these are
LGBTI.
These are basically apartheid laws.
These are the apartheid law, and we're in 2016, for heaven's sake, and nobody wants to speak about it. And we were quite excited that it's not like as Sisonke as the movement, we're not just leaving Ramaphosa hanging there peacefully.
Exactly.
We have sent him a gift whereby like it was a sunflower in Parliament to remind him that because of Ramaphosa on the 14th of June, 14 April 2016. For the first time in the history of South Africa, he gave a sex workers activist a sunflower. We replicated that into a huge, and then we presented to the president, Ramaphosa, keep your promises. And not only that, when he was launching again...
was there a promise, was he promising to decriminalize sex work?
He basically said we should find ways to look into the call for decriminalization of sex work. Okay. And then I don't want to talk much about him because we know every politician around their campaign, they will throw in sex workers. Remember, we've got much the voting power. In the country, Sanak just released a stat that only in South Africa, those that identify themselves, it's sitting at 188,000 sex workers in the country under the Criminal Act still. So imagine if sex work were to be decriminalized, whereby firstly, I'm speaking again, whereby women are free to say, you know what, officer, I'm here to open a case and I do sex work. We need to approach like Netland, whereby like sex work should be registered under the occupational health therapist.
Now, you spoke about 57% of sex workers.
0.7,
HIV positive. What is done? What is being done for them in terms of treatment? What is available to them? What can they access?
Number one, I'm quite excited that we are the first country in the whole of Africa where like sex workers themselves in their NSP, in their shopping list, they were like, you know what, Mr. Ramaphosa, what we want is PrEP. PrEP was available for sex workers, so they were the first recipients of PrEP. I know now PrEP is being rolled out.
Pre-treatment, isn't it?
Yeah, whereby like if you are exposed, then you can at least protect yourself by taking the tablet. I'm excited. And not only that, the organization has also partnered with other organizations whereby like we are making sure we rolled out mobile clinics, and then for the first time in the history of South Africa, mobile clinics are rolling out because we understand one thing, that sex workers' time it's quite different. You wouldn't find sex workers time being like your normal citizen because of their time it's money.
You mean obviously they're operating.
That's why even the programs that we run as an organization, they're sex workers led. Because we cannot just pick anybody. We need to, number one, we need to be somebody who's been into the industry or is still in the industry, so that they can speak the language and they understand the ins and outs. They understand the footprints of the industry. Okay.
Now, sex work has not been legalized. You just spoke about,
it has never been legalized.
Now, do you see a glimmer of hope as far as decriminalization is concerned?
For now, for the fact that under the human rights consultation workshops, sex workers were consulted, and then if you throw in the national health insurance, so sex workers themselves were consultant, and I'm glad that the Ministry of Health did those consultations at a national print, where like we made sure every province was present, and decriminalization is also part of the NHI. So we're rolling out. We want to see once everything is finalized, if somebody bossy out there, a gatekeeper will pull out the decriminalization. If it means for sex workers, to march,
Yes.
we will do that because of, I think it's high time as a country that, you know, we keep banging on this, that, you know, it's important and it affects life because sex workers have been murdered. We try so hard. You look, I'll make one example.
Sure.
I know some of your journalists, they'll make a headline.
Yes.
A body of a dead prostitute was found hanging in a tree. We like, no, hashtag say her name. Before you can even say a body of a dead prostitute was found hanging in a tree, you like, why don't you say Nomsa, whoever was found hanged, put it a more human face into it, because we know media, number one, they would always write around sex workers, making a joke out of it, because normally they would even go as far as demeaning them, calling them prostitute. As much as sex workers themselves, they were like, you know what, as a country, in the context of human rights, can we therefore be called sex workers?
Now, what is your wish list?
My wish list.
Yes.
Number one, it's a total criminalization of sex work.
Yes.
Remember, our law was only amended in 2017, when now the buyer of sex was also now being decriminalized. So all along it was only the seller of sex. My wish list is sex work must be decriminalized, and then upon decriminalization of sex work, we need to engage in consultative workshops, proper consultative workshops. You know, whereby like sex workers themselves, they put measures into place, regulations, things like around how are they going to be vetted, how are they going to be, you know, controlled, because this we're talking back. And it always kind of like how do you put it, whereby like each time when you're speaking about decriminalization of sex work, you know, oppositions and other people who are more of a moral aspect, they will put human trafficking into it. You know, for now as a country, there's not research that was done to say, indeed, if we were to decriminalize 1, 2, 3, X and X will happen. It's just a fear of people saying, but if we were to decriminalize sex work, ha, 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 ha. I'll just quote, in our second international AIDS conference that took place in Durban, one headlines were like, ooh, it was, I'm quoting now the headlines were like, Mahoshas are coming to Durban, milking the 900,000 guests that are coming to the country. So these are some of the headlines that you'll see out there. And you think, you know, I'm trying to sensitize even the editors themselves.
How far are you, you know, as part of your organization, how far have you reached to actually change these perceptions that are actually out there?
Number one, remember, as a movement, we had to take the SABC to court, the SABC to court, for them to implement the sensitization. This was not a program whereby like just say, okay, come and sensitize us. We needed to take the legal route, whereby like we feel like SABC are not sensitized around these issues. So then the court rolled out that, you know what, we need programs, whereby like now they're being funded to do those programs. And one thing that I liked about this programs were like, each and every time when they're doing this workshop and training on the SABC, a sex worker must be in those facilitation process so that she can be able to articulate it, and then they are well trained. Of course.
Well, you know, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us today. You know, that was Katlego Rasebitse, Advocacy Liaison for Sisonke Sex Workers Movement.